Today's reading will be from Nehemiah 6, verses 15 through 19. Nehemiah 6, 15 through 19. So the wall was finished on the 25th day of the war, in 52 days. And it happened when our enemies heard of it, while all the nations around us saw these things, that they were very disheartened in their eyes. They perceived that this work was done by our God. Also in these days, the nobles of Judah sent many letters to Tobiah, and the letters of Tobiah came to him. For many in Judah were pledged to him because he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah, the son of Abram, and his son Johanan had married the daughter of Meshulam, the son of Barakah. Also they reported his good deeds before me, and reported my works to him. I sent letters to frighten me. You may be seated.
By thanking you for being here as was announced, and appreciate those who are visiting with us. And our members, we thank you that you're here as you are expected to be here. I want to say that Corey and I have enjoyed so far visiting with people in their homes. I know some people are saying, hey, when is it my turn? When is it my turn? Be patient. Look around this wonderful auditorium. There's a lot of people, so it takes time. So I want to thank the one kind of helping organize, and I believe this is this person's gift, it's Jeff Bartlett. He does a great job in calling and putting that together for us, so we have our cards ready to go and visit, knowing where to go. Hey Siri, where's this location? And Siri takes us there, if you're familiar with the smartphones. But Jeff does a great job of organizing that, and I appreciate all the work that he does behind the scenes, in the office, and handling calls, and taking things, and preparing the bulletin, everything like that. And we are blessed to have such a great servant of God to be here at our congregation. I want to talk about the stone that's found in Nehemiah chapter 6. Before I do that, though, once upon a time, there were 3 pigs. And one of the pigs wanted to go out and seek their fortune, and so this pig ran across a person with a bundle that was selling a bundle of sticks. And so they, got the sticks, and they thought, you know what, I'm going to build my house out of sticks. And so the pig does that. And over time, a big, bad, mean wolf comes. And he huffs and he puffs and he blows that house down. The second pig, he came across a man with a bundle of straw, and he as well decides that, you know what, I'm going to build my house made out of straw. And he does that. And it's fine for a little bit, but over time, the big, bad, mean wolf comes in and huffs and puffs and blows it down. The third pig that, you know what, he came across a person selling brick. And he said, I'm going to build my house made out of brick. And he does it. Sure enough, that same mean, bad, mean old wolf that came to the first pig and second pig comes the third pig. And he huffs and he puffs and nothing happens. Now, once upon a time, there was a builder by the name of Nehemiah. And he had organized the workers to come together. And in organizing the workers, he put the people were placed in where they needed to be. And in that process of time, the wolves of people by the name of Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem came, and they huffed and puffed with their negative words to try to destroy the building of the wall, to stop them from working, and they failed. They failed because the builders, watch this, were convicted. They were convicted. They had the conviction to see not only when we start on something, but they had enough conviction to keep building until the job was done. What about us? What about stones here? Let me tell you something. In 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 5, as our text is, it says, you also as living stones. say, you won't find a translation that says, you also as living straw. Or you also as living sticks. No, you'll find always, you also as living stones are being built up, the spiritual house of God. We are to be stone-like. How are we stone-like? We're to be stone-like in our conviction, in our relationship with the Lord, in our relationship with God's people, the church. We are to be stone-like by saying that once I'm a Christian, I remain a Christian. Then I'm not a Christian for a day. I'm not a Christian for just the moment that I'm in. I'm a Christian throughout my life. And that takes conviction. And so as we find in Nehemiah chapter 6, we see that we will look at these wolves, and as Paul warned about wolves that would come in and not sparing the flock, that we need to also be looking out. We need to be ready. We need to be prepared. But more importantly, we need to be convicted. Because there's all kinds of whispers and isms that are out there that try to persuade us to keep us from doing what God wants us to do. So I ask you, as we think about building up our walls, we need the stone of conviction. You also, as a living stone, are being built up. You are a living stone. I'm a living stone. And every stone is needed to make a building. And every person is needed to make the building of the Lord's church. And the direction we are to build is to build up. Because we are part of something very special. We are part of the spiritual house of God. And so, in Nehemiah chapter 6, we see the enemy in its last efforts in trying to disrupt the building. And we need to be mindful of our enemy, the devil, who's roaming like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. He knows our weakness. He will plague upon that weakness. The first point is this. The enemy tried invitation. Maybe you know this, maybe you don't. There's an invitation, other invitation that's always offered every time we meet. When I end the sermon and Alex leads our invitational song, we stand and sing, and it's an opportunity for us to come. The Lord offers His invitation. Come to all who are weary and heavy laden, I will give you rest. Take my yoke. And there's the Lord's invitation, but there's also another invitation that's offered. And it's an invitation that I'm not offering, that a preacher doesn't offer, but it's an invitation that's being offered where you're at, where you're seating right now. It's an invitation that says this. It's that whisper in your ear. Hey, maybe next time. It also says this. Well, you know what? You're just not ready. Or, you know what you're doing is really not that bad. There's worse things you could do. Or maybe the whisper of, you know what? If you come forward and respond, they might think less of you. Or judge you. You see, when the Lord's invitation is offered, there's also the invitation that's being offered by the devil. He offers his invitation. I imagine we've all been guilty of accepting that invitation. How do we accept that invitation? We know that we're wrong in something, and we know what we need to do, what the right thing to do, but we don't do it. And James tells us if we know what to do and we don't do it, it is sin. When the wall had been rebuilt, Nehemiah received an invitation from the enemy in verse 1 and 2 of chapter 6. When the wall had been erected, when it was no longer be able to breach except for the gates had not been hung on the wall quite yet, the enemy was trying to stop the work, and they tried very hard. They ridiculed them. They mocked them in Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 19. Mocking them, they threatened them, they threatened their lives. If we see you, we're going to kill you. In Nehemiah chapter 4. And there in chapter 6, you know, it's like the old adage, you know, how do you stop the work? Let's cut off the head of the snake. So now we see them attacking the leader of this great effort, Nehemiah. So Satan, as you think about, as we look in our Bibles, he doesn't stop after he attacks us one time, does he? If we are able to withstand the devil, and we're able to cling to God, and we say no to the devil, no to temptation, let me tell you something. Temptation is going to come back to you. Jesus was tempted for 40 days in the wilderness. We find the 3 of those temptations that are mentioned. But in Luke's account, after the temptation of Jesus in the wilderness, after Jesus resisted the devil not once, not twice, but 3 times in that showdown in the wilderness, but the Bible says in Luke chapter 4, verse 13, that the devil left him waiting for another opportune time. Why is Satan so persistent? Because he wants to see us fall. It's because he hates to see the Lord's church to grow, to mature, to add more people. He hates that. And we need to be aware of that. Sanballat and Geshem, they sent an invitation to Nehemiah. They said, come, let's meet together in the village of the plain of Ono. And Nehemiah, he saw beyond their words to where their true intent was. In verse 2, he knew that what they thought to do him wrong. And so even though they invited him, he sent back the invitation by saying, you know what, I'm doing a great work. I cannot come down. Verse 3. If you really wanted to talk, you'll wait until everything is put together. But notice what it says there in Nehemiah chapter 6 and verse 4. 4 times they asked him to meet. You see, even though the Nehemiah sent a response, no, I can't come, I'm doing something very great, they sent another invitation. He said the same thing. They sent another invitation. Again, they sent the same thing. He said the same thing. 4 times. The persistence of the enemy to try to persuade him. Let me tell you something. Here's the parallel for that. If something is wrong the first time, it's going to be wrong the second time, the third time, and the 4th time. Wrong is wrong. And we need to understand that. We think about the same kind of tactic today when it comes to the enemy. Was to try to meet in the middle. They try to put him away from, notice, meet us here in this plane. The plane was away from the wall, and being away from the wall means the work would no longer continue because you're orchestrating it and organizing in such a way. What about us today in the Lord's church? Those with convictions that are not strong enough, that are willingly leave the work to drop what they're doing because of anything that goes on. Those wanting unity for and giving up the price of truth for that. Without our strong conviction in God's Word and the truth, the only truth, we can easily accept the enemy's invitation. Easily accept to do the things that God does not want us to do. And we need to be careful with that. Without strong conviction, my friends, then we are easily acceptable and open to the enemy's attacks. We need to be strong in our faith. We need to be dedicated in what we believe in. Not only in the identity of who God is, the relationship of the Son and the Spirit, but also in His body, the church. We need to be prepared. We need to be convicted and ready. But notice the enemy didn't stop after an invitation. They then tried the second point, that is intimidate. Intimidate the people. Look at verses 5 and 6. Nehemiah's enemies, they turned to pressure by sending Nehemiah, notice, an open letter. Now that may not mean much when you read through that, but let's pull that open letter out. Some translations say unsealed letter. Now if you are an individual to send a letter to somebody and someone was going to carry that letter, you wanted to make sure everything that was said was only going to be read by the person you're writing to, you would seal it. But if you're sending a letter that's open or unsealed, guess what happens? We're all curious people. We're curious today. They were curious back then. People would glance through and read it and see what it might say. That's exactly what the enemy wanted. So that they would believe the rumor that was written in this letter. And by believing in the rumor, that would take them away from start building the wall. Sanballat wanted the public to know the contents of the letter. He wanted the believers to believe in what the letter was doing, because if you could do that, you've divided the people. When you divide the people, guess what? They stop believing, or they stop building. Let me tell you something, folks. That's the same tactic the devil wants to try when it comes to the church today. And we need to be careful with that. We need to be careful with statements like, hey, I've heard this. Or did you hear about? Let me tell you something. The only message, the only words we should accept without questioning are God's. Period. If it's about somebody, well, we need to be more careful and have further review. Let me ask you about you. If something was spread about you, would you want people to accept it at face value? Or would you like for people to question it? And I think I would say that my answer would be the same as your answer. I wouldn't want someone to take something at face value without doing a little research. Maybe coming to me and asking me. Because it's my reputation on the line. It just as your reputation as well. And we need to be careful of that. That's why we need to have a strong conviction. Because within the letter, they accuse Nehemiah of this, and it's found in Nehemiah chapter 6, that Nehemiah what he was doing was not about rebuilding the wall. He wanted to promote himself as a king. It's all about himself. If I may paraphrase for our language today. It's all about him. It's all about promoting himself. It's not about the people. It's about moving himself ahead of everyone else. And I love what Nehemiah, how he responds to this. Number one is he denies the report. Look at verse 8. No such things as you say are being done, but you invent them in your heart. Nothing new under the sun, friends. They were saying something that was not true. We put it out there. Does that happen today in our world? Does that happen in our culture when people say things that they know that's not true, that they invent to persuade others? You bet. Notice the second thing he does. I love it. He prayed for strength. He said, "Oh God, strengthen my hands." Boy, what a great response that we need to do. We hear something that's maybe not true, we're not concerned about, maybe it's about us, our name is being spread around. What should we do? Pray for strength. Strengthen my hands, Lord. And the third thing he does is he goes back to work, verse 15. Got a job to do. I mean, I can stand and I can fight fires after fire after fire, but all I'm doing is I'm taking away from the work what I need to be doing. You know, are you of the person where what you do speaks more of what someone may say about you? Are we of the reputation of our own self that whatever someone, they may have something wrong against us, they want to spread something about us, will people not believe that because of the kind of reputation that we've established? Titus spoke of that in Titus chapter 2 and in verse 8. Notice, watch this, that we may be sound in speech, that's healthy speech, that cannot be condemned, that those who oppose us are ashamed, because they have nothing that they can say against us. Sanballat's plan failed. Why? Because of conviction of truth. They were convicted. When the letters failed, they hired a man to come in to try to deceive Nehemiah. But again, Nehemiah sniffed it out and realized that again there was another tactic to try to persuade him. And he saw through the words. He perceived that this individual was working, Shemaiah was working with the enemy. And he knew that he was hired to strike fear, to intimidate, and to smear his good name. What about us today? Sanballat and Shemaiah. People that are trying to intimidate with our words with so many labels. Well, they're just traditionalists. They're conservatives. They're this, they're that, they're old-fashioned, they're legalists. Whatever name that they want to use to try to label you or myself, although those words may not be pleasant to hear, we must not let them intimidate us as God's people to endure this life as a Christian. We've got to have a strong conviction in truth. You understand what I'm saying? If you don't believe the words in this book, you don't believe enough to stand up on it, you don't believe them enough to fight against those who speak against it, you'll easily fall. We're attacked constantly every day. Whether we see it as attack or not, because of our culture, because of the way the world operates, because of the differences that people, how they act, how they believe, what they say, goes against the standard of what this is. There's people that are convicted in a lot of things, but I'll tell you something, folks, our conviction needs to be in this good book. You want to endure this hard life? You want to go the way that's difficult that Jesus says, you have to be convicted in His words. Nehemiah was convicted in God's words. Nehemiah and the builders were convicted because they understood what the truth was. Let me tell you something. Truth will always prevail. Period. Well, how can I say that? I say that in this way. Who has the last word? Is it us as people? Or is it our Almighty God who will stand before it? It's God. Truth will always win. And we need to hold on to that. The final thing for your consideration is this. They tried infiltration. Finally, the wall had been completed. Look at verse 15. 52 days. I would say 52 long, hard days. The embarrassment was not with the builders. At the beginning of the work, they were laughing. They were mocking. You're going to build this wall. It's going to be weak. You know, and a fox could jump on it and it will fall down. But who's laughing at that? The wall is so fortified it could not be breached. The embarrassment was now with the enemy. They had laughed at the beginning, but the laughter was at the enemy now. But even though the wall was built, Nehemiah's victory was cut short. Look at verse 17. In those days, the nobles of Judah sent many letters to Tobiah. The letters of Tobiah came to them. Wait a minute, time out. Isn't he one of the enemy? Yes. Guess what the enemy's doing? He's writing letters to some of the people inside the wall. And they're writing letters back to him. They found a weak link among the nobles. They were aware of this weak link, of their liberal tendencies, if you will. Some of these nobles had charged their own brethren by charging interest and selling their own brethren as slavery. And on this particular occasion, the enemy was sending letters, or rather the people were sending letters to the enemy. And they believed in Tobiah's letters. We need to learn from the nobles this point. Don't believe everything you read. Period. Don't believe in everything you read. You know, church can have its nobles that are like nobles that receive that. Those that can be influenced by others easily and take what the others have said as the truth and not what is true. What is noble in the sense of the Word of God. We also find in verse 18 that some of them were kin to Tobiah. So their human connection was stronger than their spiritual affection. Those that choose to wish to follow their own family, putting family ahead of their faith. So they sent back to Tobiah the things that were going on inside the camp. So as long as Tobiah had an access point about ourselves as God's people in the church, we think very hard about our conviction, what we need. The very last stone that was placed upon the wall is the stone that we so desperately need in our culture, in our church today. That is the stone to be convicted. You have people attacking God. You have people attacking the credibility of the Bible. You have people attacking Christianity, saying that Jesus is the only way. That's an offensive statement. And the list goes on and on and on, of attack after attack after attack. Going back to the old story of the three pigs, you'll notice the straw hut or house and the stick house, they didn't withstand the wolf. It was the brick home that withstood the huffing and the puffing from the wolf. Peter says, you also, as living stones. Are you stone-like in your conviction? Is your conviction an appropriate metaphor for your conviction in the Lord as a stone? Or is your conviction like a stick? Is your conviction like straw? And we know what happens to straw-like convictions. We know what happens to stick-like convictions. As Paul says, take heed lest you fall, you fall. The world is tough. And it's hard. And I'm not going to come here and tell you that follow Jesus and your life's going to be all good and much better roses, because Jesus never said that. But we do have God's help. We do have the promise of Spirit's presence in our life. One of the greatest statements to me is what it says in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5, where God says, it's quoted, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Last time I was in April. I was at a parent-teacher conference with our middle son. My head was pounding. I said, I got to leave. I drove home. I don't know how I drove home. My sodium was low. My brain expands, and it hurts like everything. I called a friend. He took me to the emergency room. I was already dressed in PJ pants because I knew I was going to stay. I'd done this many times. But on the whole way there, I kept saying this over and over and over. For he himself has said, I will never leave nor forsake you. For he himself has said, I will never leave nor forsake you. For he himself has said, I will never leave nor forsake you. Why do you think I was quoting that so much at that particular time? Because the temptation to blame God, to question God, to deny God was great. And I needed to be convicted even more at that time of what God has said. Do you have that same conviction? It is a tough time when you are tried, when you are tempted. Are you convicted enough to say no to temptation and say yes to God? Invitation is offered. Two invitations are offered. The Lord's invitation is offered to come to me. I need help. I need forgiveness. I need to be a Christian. Then there's the devil's invitation. He's not offering from the pulpit. He's offered at your seat. No, you're not ready yet. No, the time's not right. What do you think people think of you? You know the moments. You know the invitations. It's up for you to decide. As together, we all stand.